Okay guys, this lecture is in the event that I am not here, and you are getting some of this information from the textbook, and this will hopefully explain some of the answers to some of the questions that I'm asking and prepare you to take the assessment on learning target number 2 for protein synthesis. Learning target number 2 is about mutations. The first question on the sheet that you needed to fill out from your reading was, what is a mutation? And a mutation is this: it's a change in the genetic information stored in the DNA. Now that's an answer in my own words. If you simply wrote it's a heritable change in the DNA or a heritable change in the gene or something like that, the exact definition from the textbook, that's fine. However, you must use different language when you write the answer for me, and it must be correct. So I have put it in my own words. I did note that it has to be heritable, or it means it has to be able to pass from one generation to the next. But the key here is that it's a change in the information in the DNA. Okay? The mutation happens in the DNA, and that's very important to understand as we go through this. The next question, what is a gene mutation? A gene mutation is the kind of mutation. There are a couple different types of mutations that you read about, gene mutations and chromosome mutations. For this class, though, however, I'm mostly interested in you understanding gene mutations. And these are changes to one or a few bases in the code of one gene. So one gene, which is one section of DNA that has information for making one trait. If you change one or several bases in that piece of DNA, you will have a gene mutation. This section should look something like this. Let me see if I can get this oriented in here. Okay. I have diagrammed out, and I copied this basically directly from the book, and I noted where there was a substitution or one base change here from a C to a T, an insertion where an A was inserted into the gene sequence, and then a deletion where in this case a G was removed. In each case, it results in a different sequence for the mRNA, which means a different sequence of amino acids from the original, and a different sequence of amino acids is going to cause a different trait. Up here I show the DNA of the original, the mRNA of the original, and the amino acid sequence of the original. Second page, defining the word mutagen. Okay. So the first question asks you to define and describe one kind of mutagen, and a mutagen is this: it's a chemical or physical thing in the environment that causes a mutation to occur. There are many mutagens. Often when we talk about things that cause cancer, we're talking about mutagens because cancer is usually a change in the DNA. Some examples that they gave in the reading were pesticides and smoke. They gave a few others, but in all examples, they increase the mutation rate in the DNA. So they make the mutation changes in the DNA more likely. They do that by breaking it or by interfering with base pairing. They do that in a variety of ways. Question number 5. Why do we think we must restrict our exposure to radiation? So why is it important not to get too much radiation? Well, this relates to the answer you just gave. Radiation, that can come from the sun, that can come from X-rays, it can come from a variety of sources, are mutagens. That means they cause changes in your DNA. That means they increase the likelihood of a mutation in the DNA. Protective gear, so when you go into the dentist and they put that kind of heavy lead coat over you, lay it over you, or blanket or whatever you want to call it, when they take X-rays of your mouth, that's protective gear. It makes sure that fewer of the cells in your body get exposed to the mutagen. Okay? And if fewer cells are exposed, that means less of your DNA is exposed, less mutations are going to happen. You do this, you put protective gear on to avoid radiation from the sun as well. Can you guess what that protective gear might be? It's sunscreen. Right? Or clothes, I suppose, but sunscreen is protective gear. It means less cells will be exposed to the harmful effects of radiation. When you guys go and tan, if you go and tan, You are exposing yourself to a known mutagen. Radiation is a mutagen. It will mutate your DNA. And if the mutation causes something like cancer, it is a harmful mutation. In this case, it leads to uncontrolled cell growth. This is how you get skin cancer. And I don't know what's going on with my thing here. I think it's having trouble. Well, that's annoying. Well, I'm just going to continue, and hopefully you guys won't get a stroke from doing this. Another kind of harmful mutation is sickle cell disease. It's caused by a single gene mutation that leads to pain, frequent infections, slow growth of the body. The next question asks you to provide one example of a beneficial effect of a gene mutation. They gave the example of these African mosquitoes where mutations change their DNA so that they are not affected by pesticides. Let me focus this. That are designed to kill those mosquitoes. Now, that might not be good news for us because it's nice when we can kill mosquitoes, but if the genes change, that is a good thing for the mosquitoes. So it's important to note that mutations, while we think of them generally as being bad, mutations can be beneficial as well. And in fact, when we get into evolution, we'll talk about the idea that actually all variety is the result of a mutation at some point. So the fact that some people have brown hair and some people have blonde hair, some people have red hair, some people have black hair, is the result of mutations in the DNA that makes hair. And those mutations were heritable, were passed on down. Last question is, I would consider to be the most important one in terms of showing me the connection between what we learned earlier in this unit and what you just learned about mutations. It comes back to this central idea that DNA is used to make RNA, which is used to make protein, which is used to make a trait. So if you're going to explain how a mutation in the DNA actually changes a trait, you need to explain that a mutation changes the DNA information. That's going to change the genetic code in the RNA, or the genetic information in the RNA. This is going to lead to a different order for the amino acids because the amino acids are connected to the codons from the RNA. The ribosome is involved in that. And if the amino acid sequence changes, it'll make a different protein. Because the proteins make our traits, a change in the protein means you have a different trait. And whatever that mutation is, whether that trait is cancer, which is not a good mutation to have, or whether that trait is, curly hair, it is a mutation.